This universe is full of bizarre events that defy human comprehension. One of these unusual things is a surprising new find beneath Antarctica's ice that has transformed the way scientists think. Antarctica is almost entirely covered in ice. In fact, less than half of the huge continent is ice-free, and something is happening beneath this vast stretch of ice that shouldn't be possible. Many people do not consider Antarctica to be a desirable vacation destination, but given what scientists have discovered there, they might be right. What has been going on in Antarctica recently? What kind of impact does it have on daily life? Is there any cause for alarm? Let's find out in this video. It may come as a shock to many to know that Antarctica wasn't always an icy piece of land. Hundreds of millions of years ago, this massive continent remained unfrozen. It only started freezing about 34 million years ago. Scientists have conducted some research on Antarctica's rich history, and they discovered that this continent was just as warm and tropical as the rest of the world. It consisted of a lot of trees and a massive rainforest at some point in time. So what changed? 34 million years ago, a dramatic shift in climate caused the North and South poles to start freezing up. These parts of the Earth became colder and colder at a relatively fast pace, becoming filled with ice in just a few centuries. In this present age, these poles are now viewed as ice houses, uninhabitable by many people. Ever since the shift happened, scientists across several millennia have been trying to find out what caused this massive climate change, to no avail. If we get the answer to this complicated question, we will be able to answer so many more questions about this round ball of rock we call our home. I'm sure you're probably wondering how scientists researched Antarctica back then. In that period, scientists commonly used the study of microfossils in deep-sea mud to measure how cold Antarctica was becoming. Not only were they able to understand the current temperature of Antarctica, but they could also use this method to understand its climate change over the years and decades. Today, scientists found out that the oceans warming up at some point in time was highly responsible for Antarctica's freezing up. As the oceans warmed up, ice sheets appeared on both poles and the Arctic. However, that's not the major cause behind Antarctica's freezing up, and scientists know that. They've been trying to figure out the answers ever since, and their quest for it has taken them to Africa. Scientists from Cardiff University and Amgalva Cymru have arrived in Tanzania and have started drilling that part of the Earth looking for answers. Through their drilling and investigations, they have discovered cores of ancient mud that were deposited on the seafloor several million years ago. The Tanzanian cores are very different from other locations because a large amount of mud and sand were deposited on the land, making for a hard surface containing millions of years' worth of answers. In fact, you can even find the microfossils that the scientists back then were so fond of. Through their research, they have finally figured out how the sea level fall fits in with the climate shift. These stellar scientists have used the microfossils that were found in this thick layer of mud to formulate ice formation and temperature records throughout the past few million years. They have confirmed that as the oceans cooled down, the extreme ends of the Earth started getting a lot colder, causing ice sheets to appear all over. Although they found out what made the ice sheets start forming on the North and South Pole, they still need to find out what caused the world to generally cool down, and that's what they did. They started by suspecting a change in CO2 concentration to be behind the cooling down of the Earth. They suspect that CO2 gradually reduced over time, and Earth orbiting the Sun made it possible for the ice to remain frozen all year long. Sadly, Antarctica has been on the decline for millions of years due to several reasons. One of the main ones being climate change and global warming. Many of these scientists fear that as the oceans and land heat up, the ends of the isle will continue to get warm. As you may expect, this would cause Antarctica to defrost itself and unleash the frozen waters on the Earth. Experienced marine biologist and scientist Jonathan P. Klages thinks that this is fast becoming true. For reference, he's one of the best marine biologists in the world, and his team is one of the best ones around. This set of amazing scientists works on the RV Polar Stem, which is used to safely get to both the Arctic and Antarctica. It also comes with a powerful drill that allows these scientists to conduct their research easily. This ship also has a drill that can dig up soil up to 90 million-year-old strata. These layers are so important to keep intact while you drill in order to measure and date the point of origin accurately. Klages and his team are front-runners of marine discovery lately, as they have been the first to discover quite a lot of information in water and on Earth. As you might expect, the Polar Stem ship consists of an icebreaker that will protect them from harm. However, don't think for 1 minute that this makes their job easy. In order to dig through multiple layers of the Earth at once, they have to employ the use of several techniques and skills. For one, this ship weighs about 10 tons. Additionally, it carries about 7 20-foot containers, which all contain drilling equipment for them to use. When they get to their destination, they have to use several heavy pieces of equipment to set up the drill each time. Additionally, the drill doesn't sit on the ground completely. It gets suspended about a few meters above the ground, and it needs to be powered by a 1,000-meter-long cable. Lastly, they have to monitor the progress of the drill with about 8 HD cameras situated at different levels of the drill at all times. If they miss any of these steps, the purpose of finding information could all be for naught. There are about 2 magazines in the drill, one filled and one empty at all times. Normally, drilling is too complicated a process for the scientists, so they leave it to drilling experts when the time comes. During one of their drilling sessions, they found something strange, something they hadn't seen before. Naturally, this caused massive excitement, as discovery is always something to be excited about. The sample of mud that they discovered did not look like the regular mud found all over Antarctica. It was a special kind of mud that seemed to have a lot of content. Immediately, some of the scientists on Klage's crew began to speculate that the special contents found in this soil were some sort of organic matter. After concluding the research and heading home, the sample followed a few weeks later. Through the help of a hospital they partnered up with, they were able to use their CT scanners to find out the accurate origin of this strange matter. The content of this matter shocked them and the whole scientific industry at large. According to the CT scans conducted multiple times, it was discovered that it was in fact organic matter. To be more precise, these were fossil roots that originated several million years ago. As you might expect, this is the closest piece of information anyone has gotten to proving the existence of plant life in Antarctica. Before this, you could only find plants and fossil roots about 1,000 kilometers from the North and South Poles. Klage's study could open up doors for even more discoveries being made. Antarctica is mainly a hub for climatologists, oceanographers, and marine biologists. However, the frozen desert also attracts astronomers from across the globe. This is because, if you can bear the cold, Antarctica is one of the best places on Earth to observe space. This is thanks to its dry climate and the absence of light pollution. Speaking of watching space, this brings NASA, the king of the outer universe, into the mix. What has NASA been doing in Antarctica? Looking down from the above, you might think the Antarctic ice sheet looks like a calm, perpetual ice blanket that has covered Antarctica for millions of years. But don't be surprised that the ice sheet can be thousands of meters deep at its thickest and hides hundreds of meltwater lakes where its base meets the continent's bedrock. Now, using the most advanced Earth-observing laser instrument NASA has ever flown in space, scientists have improved their maps of these hidden lake systems under the West Antarctic ice sheet and have discovered 2 more of these active subglacial lakes named Conway and Mercer. The new study provides critical insight for spotting new subglacial lakes from space and assessing how this hidden plumbing system influences the speed at which ice slips into the Southern Ocean, adding fresh water that may alter its circulation and ecosystems. With NASA's Ice Cloud and Land Elevation Satellite 2, or ICESat-2, scientists have been able to precisely map the subglacial lakes. The satellite measures the height of the ice surface, which, despite its enormous thickness, rises or falls as lakes fill or empty under the ice sheet. The study, published in Geophysical Research Letters, integrates height data from ICESat-2's predecessor, the original ICESat mission, and the European Space Agency's satellite dedicated to monitoring polar ice thickness, Cryosat-2. Hydrology systems under the Antarctic ice sheet have been a mystery for decades. That began to change in 2007 when Helen Amanda Fricker, a glaciologist at Scripps Institution of Oceanography at the University of California, San Diego, made a breakthrough that helped update classical understanding of subglacial lakes in Antarctica. Using data from the original ICESat in 2007, Fricker found for the first time that under Antarctica's fast-flowing ice streams, an entire network of lakes connects, filling and draining actively over time. Before, these lakes were thought to hold meltwater statically without filling and draining. The original ICESat mission is credited with discovering the interconnected systems of lakes at the ice-bed interface that are moving water around, allowing scientists to study all the impacts on glaciology, microbiology, and oceanography. However, with the ICESat-2, scientists had a powerful tool that yielded data so high in precision that they were able to start mapping out the lake boundaries on the surface. Scientists have hypothesized subglacial water exchange in Antarctica results from a combination of factors, including fluctuations in the pressure exerted by the massive weight of the ice above, the friction between the bed of the ice sheet and the rocks beneath, and heat coming up from the earth below that is insulated by the thickness of the ice. That's a stark contrast from the Greenland ice sheet, where lakes at the bed of the ice fill with meltwater that is drained through cracks and holes in the surface. How deep below the surface are the Conway and Mercer lakes? These hidden gems of frigid water hidden beneath 1.2 to 2.5 miles or 2 to 4 kilometers of ice on the southernmost continent. They fill and drain over and over again in largely mysterious cycles that may influence how fast the ice sheet moves and how and where meltwater reaches the Southern Ocean. This flow in turn can change the currents in the Southern Ocean and potentially affect ocean circulation worldwide. Unlike most lakes on the surface that remain in a place for years, this underground water system is dynamic or highly fluid, pun intended. By combining data from multiple satellites from 2003 to 2020, scientists have been able to trace changes in the subglacial lake system between those years. They focused on 3 areas with good satellite coverage and known active lakes: the boundary between the Mercer and Whillans ice streams in West Antarctica, the lower McHale ice stream, also in West Antarctica, and the upper Academy Glacier in East Antarctica. At the Mercer and Whillans boundary, the researchers found 2 new lakes, which they dubbed the Lower Conway Subglacial Lake and the Lower Mercer Subglacial Lake. They also found that what was thought to be 1 lake under the McHale ice stream was actually 2. Over time, these lakes experienced major change. For example, the lakes beneath the Mercer and Whillans ice stream boundary have undergone at least 3 periods of drainage in 17 years. Meanwhile, all of the lakes beneath the McHale ice stream have followed their own patterns of draining and filling. The lowermost lake went through 4 fill-drain events during the study period, each taking only about a year to complete. The second lake drained between 2014 and 2015 and had been filling up again, while the third lake drained just slightly between 2016 and 2017. Meanwhile, the lakes beneath the Academy Glacier drained between 2009 and 2018. All of these changes are puzzle pieces in scientists' understanding of the speed and direction of Antarctica's ice sheet flow. Already, researchers are finding the links between the under-ice lakes and the ocean. In January last year, the study co-authored found that the drainage of 1 lake on the Amory ice shelf in East Antarctica flushed as much as 198 billion gallons, or 750 billion liters, into the ocean in only 3 days, as reported by Live Science. While it is fascinating to find lakes buried deep underneath the ice in the Antarctic, one question you might be asking is whether there is life in that lake. The environment is harsh enough on the surface, but can life survive deep down in the 2 newly discovered lakes? Expedition leader John Priscu, a professor of polar ecology at the University of Montana, answers that early studies of water samples taken from Lake Mercer showed that they contained approximately 10,000 bacterial cells per millimeter. While that is only about 1% of the 1 million microbial cells per millimeter typically found in the open ocean, it remains a remarkable find for a sunless body of water buried deep beneath an Antarctic glacier. But that is not the end, because the high levels of bacterial life in the dark and deeply buried lakes are signs that it might support higher life forms such as microscopic animals like tardigrades. Meanwhile, the abundance of bacterial life in Lake Mercer mirrored the discovery of high levels of bacterial life in Antarctica's nearby subglacial Lake Whillans in 2013 in an expedition that Priscu also led. Scientists theorize that the bacteria in Lake Whillans and possibly Lake Mercer are surviving on deposits of carbon laid down by photosynthesizing organisms between 5,000 and 10,000 years ago, when the buried lakes may have been connected to the open ocean. During their stay on the ice from mid-December last year, the expedition team used drills and hot water to open a borehole from their camp at the frozen surface down to the buried lake of liquid water. The drill team bored through about 3,504 feet or 1,068 meters of ice, and the water below was a chilly 30.8 degrees Fahrenheit or minus 0.65 degrees Celsius, so that scientific researchers could take water samples and sediment cores from the lake, which was about 49 feet or 15 meters deep at that spot. The team had also lowered a specialized remotely operated underwater vehicle or ROV into the dark waters of the buried lake, as well as several cameras, which they used to take images and make a video of the lake floor. The discovery has implications for the search for life on other planets, particularly on planet Mars, where signs of a buried lake of liquid salt water were seen in data reported in 2018 by the European Space Agency's orbiting Mars Express spacecraft. In fact, Priscu thinks that any life below the frozen surface of the planet Mars might follow the patterns seen in Antarctica's subglacial lakes. Blood Fall is another discovery that you would definitely love to see yourself. One of the best parts about this discovery is that the glacier is stained with red fluid, looking like a massive wound in the glacier. Perhaps the most surprising fact about moving to Antarctica is that the trip is not so expensive. If you have a flair for adventure, you would definitely love to embark on this life-changing trip. If you need more information about the Blood Fall trip, you're in luck. Blood Falls were once filled with a massive amount of salt water supplied by a lake. Unfortunately, that lake has been cut off from Blood Falls due to glaciers that formed at the top of the lake. Now the remnants of the water in Blood Fall have accumulated massive amounts of salt, 3 times more than regular salt water all over the world. As a result of that, the water cannot freeze no matter how cold it is. The atmosphere surrounding Blood Falls also has less amounts of oxygen and sunlight than other places, so be careful when exploring. Make sure you adhere to the strict instructions set by the officials in order to avoid unfavorable situations. Tell us what you think in the comments section below.